Welcome to our webinar on how MSPs can make money with CMMC. We're going to give it a couple of minutes as a bunch of people are coming in. So if you'll bear with me for another minute or so, we'll be right back to you and we'll get started. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started and let the other people come in. Welcome. We appreciate you being here today. We're going to talk about how MSPs can make money with CMMC. I'm going to be your host. My name is Matthew Koenig. I'm VP of Channel with Nodeware. You've got Ken Barnaby, Regional Sales Manager with IGI. Also, to clear up any confusion, IGI is the sister company in Nodeware. They created us and spun us off. So we work together on a regular basis because we offer different services. So please don't get confused by that. So today, we're going to talk and give a little bit of a CMMC overview, not too technical, but make sure everybody understands what the different levels are and why they're important. We're going to talk about you and CMMC, what's important for you to know, why it's an opportunity, how you can make money. We're going to give you some sample discovery questions. We're going to talk about, of course, how you can partner with IGI for some of the services we offer. We're also going to answer any questions that you have. We'll stay as long as questions come in and answer any questions that you have. And we're also going to present you and then afterwards send to you a bunch of resources that we created to make your life going after this market easier, where you don't have to leave this and then, create all kinds of stuff. So why should you even listen to us? Because there are a lot of people out there saying, we do CMMC, we can teach you CMMC. Well, the reason you should listen to us is, first of all, we have CMMC certified assessors on staff. And what that means is they actually went through the certification process with the federal government. They're not an RPO. And what that means is they're not a readiness practitioner who just thinks they know a lot about CMMC and is trying to help you. These guys are actually certified. We have relationships with multiple auditors. And what that means is our CCAs have had the chance to monitor and shadow those auditors through their entire process. So we can learn not only what they do, but how they do it and how they expect the results to be presented to make things easy and smooth. We live this every day. This isn't just an extra service we provide on a grouping of 1 million of them. It's something that we do as a main business function on a regular basis. Now, one caveat, I don't want you to think that if you don't work with us, that, or our auditors, you won't pass an audit. That is not the message. That's just saying we've done those things to make sure that we're providing the best services possible. You do not have to use us or any of our auditors in order to pass an audit. Ken?
Awesome. Great intro, Matthew. Thank you. Thank you again, everybody, for joining today. So what is CMMC? The Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. Keyword there is that certification. Right? Your clients will get that stamp of approval. Okay. It was created by the DoD, Department of Defense. That's the framework that they're focusing on this on. It's designed to ensure companies properly protect sensitive government data. It's required by contractors, subcontractors that are working directly or indirectly with the DoD. Okay, so why should you guys be excited for this, right? So the impact to your clients, they must comply with this regulation or they're at risk of losing revenue along with you, right? Client loses revenue, there's a good chance that goes downstream. Okay, so the opportunity for MSPs is to help your clients and guide them through the compliance and become that long-term security partner, which we all like to be, right? We want that recurring revenue.
Real quick, don't mean to interrupt. I forgot to let you know, if you have questions throughout the presentation, please put them in the question box and we will answer all of them live as we go on, or at least at the end. And again, we will make sure we answer every question. Sorry, Ken, keep going.
No, please jump in. So the purpose of CMMC program is to validate the effective implementation of the NIST 800-171 controls. You probably are all familiar with the NIST framework, and CMMC is built off of that, right? So it's to help implement and protect the confidentiality of the FCI and CUI of those contracts. CMMC is based off of 14 families, level 2, excuse me. So Level 2 is based off of 14 families and 320 objectives. There is repercussions for your clients that fail to comply with the CMMC. There are some incentives for people to be a whistleblower even. And we've seen damages upwards of 3 times the damages, right? So if you have a contract that's $1 million, those fines could be 3 times that. So they are really hammering down, the certification process and make sure that organizations are being compliant.
Hey, Ken, HIPAA came out several years back, probably, God, it has to be, could it be 10 years by now? But anyway, when it came out, everybody freaked out and everything like that. And they were going to get audited. And then the federal government did almost nothing. They're just finally starting to do stuff. So although HIPAA was a big deal, people were correct in saying, I'm not going to get audited. Are people actually getting audited with this now?
They will be, absolutely. So we've, like I said, we've seen damages, penalties coming down that are up to 3 times the damages. So yes, they are being audited. It is a very serious offense if they are non-compliant. I think one other key point here we want to take away is that is a 3-year certification. So it's not just a one and done. Oh, I've got it. I'm good to go. It is a 3-year life cycle. So you get certified. You have years 1 and 2 to validate. You can self-test, and then that 4th year is a full recertification year. So again, it's important for you MSPs to stay engaged and have these reoccurring revenue streams to make sure that, hey, they're staying on top of it, you're staying on top of it, so that way when year 4 comes, it's a seamless certification process.
Yeah, well, it's also true that they can be audited any time in that 3-year period. It's not you get audited one time, right? You pass your whatever. They can look at you anytime during that 3 years. So it's got to be kept up, even though in year 4 you have to do it again, because at any point in time, someone could say, show me this. And if it's incorrect.
Yeah, it's no bueno. So FCI versus CUI. What is the difference? You'll see a lot of that language throughout all contracts. FCI is just a federal contract information, right? So project schedules, project progress reports, some internal emails discussing about how to complete a task, meeting notes. They're required to meet level 1, right? So if you have any sort of government contracts, specifically around DoD, you have to be level 1, okay? CUI is that controlled unclassified information. So you're storing or you have access to sensitive technical data, financials, legal, blueprints, anything that is more than just contract information. We're seeing that is considered as CUI, okay? So that is going to require a level 2 certification, or in some cases even higher. But right now, the level 2 is the main level that we are seeing. So level 1 again is just systems that handle the FCI, just that basic contract information. Level 2 is for systems handling the CUI. Level 3 is for systems handling highly sensitive CUI.
Yeah, and to just jump in there, for those of you wondering what level 3 is, even though you probably never have to worry about it, you're talking Lockheed Martin, Boeing, people that make tanks and stuff like that. I mean, so you're talking really high level, highly sensitive stuff.
Yeah, those are your prime contractors, correct? Yep. So most of your MSP opportunities are going to be in that level 1 and level 2, in which both you can make money, and that's really what we want to bring to the table today.
So why should MSPs care? Well, first of all, there's a massive market opportunity across defense contractors in the supply chain. Did you know that out of the 80,000 DoD contractors, currently 50,000 approximately still need to be compliant? Huge marketplace. Companies are unprepared and need guidance. Matter of fact, if I read correctly the other day, about 60% of people that are going to audits right now are failing them because they're not adequately prepared. And this is an immediate need for those that must comply. No sales pitch needed. There's no fear, uncertainty, and doubt. They either have to comply or they don't. And if they do, they have to do something. Not a huge sales pitch needed. You can make money, and we're going to go into more details on how later, but just so you can tell, at a high level, MSPs can package compliance and security into recurring revenue. You can sell readiness services and ongoing services to get them into and to stay in compliance. It positions you as a strategic advisor, not someone that's just coming in and going, here's your hardware, here's your software, blah, blah, blah. You know, you're getting involved in things that are critical to their business, not just to their actual technology. And early movers, they're going to win, you know, long-term contracts and client loyalty. If you get in ahead of time, people are going to look at you as the subject matter expert. Just is what it is. How to determine the required level. So you're going to start with a contract review. Required CMMC information is often specified. It says you must be CMMC level 1, you know, certified, or in some cases, if you win this contract, you have to be level 2. You can ask if a client handles CUI. If they do in any way, shape, or form, they have to be level 2. If they only have basic contract data, right, and this is where you can explain to them what that means, then they have to be level 1. However, you have to look at the supply chain. Subcontractors inherit requirements from the primes, but they still have compliance controls to meet. Okay, so this goes to contractors and subcontractors of each. You're going to help interpret requirements and map them to real environments, right? You're going to document this and you're going to provide evidence. And most important, misclassification can lead to lost contract or failed audits and significant fines for the contracted entity. If you fail an audit, okay, it's not just you fail, go back again, it's a mark against you for going into that audit and failing it. I don't know what the actual details, I'll have to check with one of our CCAs, but I do know it's a check mark against you. It's not just a, okay, start from the beginning again.
Yeah, it gets reported, which is about, you know, really, you know, where we can come to play, right, to make sure that we're getting them ready throughout that process. So, you know, when an MSP is in scope for CMMC has been a big topic, right? So again, it's all about the data and who has access to it. You know, can you access the contractor's controlled unclassified information, the CUI? Do you have access to that? Okay. Do you administer systems that store, process, or transmit that CUI? I don't want to go through all of these, but you kind of get the hint here that, hey, if I have access to that, or if I have that contract, it falls downstream. There's a good chance that you could be in scope, okay? Out of scope, you know, and we can help organizations determine this, right? Who's in scope, who's out of scope, and get you, you know, figured out where you lie. You know, but we're seeing a lot of MSPs providing services through the managed access, right? Through a jump box, through a VDI, somewhere through those, you know, those avenues to keep those MSPs out of scope. You know, or if you're just providing guidance, right? If you're just being that consultant, you know, that consultant to them, you know, you don't have that access. Again, it's who has that access, you know, and who's responsible. Right? Is the customer responsible? Is the MSP responsible? There's a clear line between the two, right? So, you know, the customer is the one that's going to have to achieve and maintain that certification because they are the ones that have that true contract. You have a contract with your client, okay? You know, it comes down to the scope, right? So define that scope of their environment. Identify where that confidential information exists, where that FCI exists. You know, develop and maintain a compliance documents, manage vendors, your MSP relationship. These are where these customers are going to, you know, take that responsibility. And then the MSP, what are you responsible for? You know, you're going to be implementing and operating security tools, you know, any system administration supporting that CUI environment. The two we have here highlighted is provide the operational evidence of controls. Again, CMMCs really comes down to the scope and the documentation and the processes and procedures. Got to have a shared responsibility matrix. That is a key document between your clients and yourselves. That is pretty much standard process for level 2.
And one of the important things, as you can see on the bottom, remember something, okay? The CMMC compliance is the responsibility of whatever the entity is, so your customer. Now, we're gonna talk about whether you have to be or not, but if you're working on compliance with a customer, it is their compliance, they're responsible, right? You're not responsible for their overall compliance. That's important to know, because I know some MSPs have gotten scared by that and gone, oh my God, I have to. They're the ones who have to say yes or no and say, yes, they're ready for an audit. That's not you. So does an MSP have to be certified level 2 if a client is? It's a question we get all the time. So first blatant answer, no, okay? You just have to prove that what you're doing meets all the controls and standards that are required, and you would provide the documentation evidence that shows that you meet those standards, okay? In order to do that, you do not have to be certified. Now, there are some advantages to being certified. There's something called the MSP Collective out there. At the database, where lots of DoD contractors are being pointed to find MSPs that are CMMC certified, so they can say, been there, done that. There's currently only 43 MSPs listed in that. So you would be an elite company. Second thing, prospects that you deal with inherit the controls that you've already met, so the technology controls, and it makes it way easier and less expensive when they're using you to become compliant. Now, that's not to say it, boom, but a lot of times it's 2 or 3 things that need to be reviewed, not an entire process on the technology piece that you bring to the table. Stickiness, if they replace you with a non-certified MSP, guess what? They have to start the process literally from scratch. They have to start completely from scratch and go through another audit again because of that change in control. And finally, it's the ability to show that you've been there, done that, that you take this seriously. You know, that you're not just saying, hey, this is something we can help with. But let me be clear again, do you have to be certified? You do not have to be certified to work with a client, even if they're level 2.
I think it's really important to touch here just really quick is it's also not okay not to do anything, right? If you want to keep your clients and they have those contracts, you have to do something. Right, you have to have those processes and documentation in place. It's, no longer just, oh, it's their responsibility. I just provide, firewall, updates, things like that. You have to do something. You have to have things documented, and make sure that you're part of that shared responsibility matrix.
Yep. I mean, the thing is, the idea of this webinar, right, is not to say, oh my God, there's a gold rush. There's a million opportunities. But it is to provide you information, so if one of your customers needs to be compliant, or you do find a prospect that does, you don't need to be scared and you don't need to walk away from it, because there's an opportunity for you there and what it is. But please don't take this webinar as we're telling you, oh my God, you can go out and make $10 million tomorrow. Not the message. The message is, though, as you find these opportunities, there is no reason for you to walk away, and there is an opportunity for you to simply make money helping that customer. So some discovery questions, simple ones, right? Do you currently own a DoD contract? Are you a subcontractor? These are the ones you're asking to your clients, right? To anyone that currently owns or participates in a DoD contract or with a DoD entity. Do you handle government data of any kind? It doesn't matter how big or small. Okay, it literally matters, do you handle it? Have you been asked by CMMC by any of your clients or contractors? So again, you're asking your customer these questions. Technical type questions. Do you currently have FCI or CUI stored within your environment? And you know what's cool? They don't know, we just gave you the definition. So you can help them discover that. And once again, you're showing value there in helping them figure out what's going on. Where is that data stored? How is it backed up? Who has access to it, right? Do you have a complete asset inventory? And I know this is a weird one, but here's the thing. If you don't have a complete asset inventory, then you absolutely can't certify that you know where that data is, who has access to it, where it's stored. Do you know who employees and non-employees, to my point, can access that data, even remotely? And what current security controls do they have in place? That's important because when you look at doing gap assessment, we'll get into that later, you need to know what's there versus what needs to be there in order to make sure they can be compliant. This is a great one. Do you have any revenue tied to the DoD? If so, how much? Because if they don't do it, that's the amount of revenue they're going to lose. Now, remember, when you're going in and talking about this stuff, this is not fear, uncertainty, and doubt. If any of you have heard my presentations on how to sell security services, you know that's one of my biggest pet peeves. You don't use fear, uncertainty, and doubt. This is fact. They don't have to like it, but this is absolute fact that you're bringing forward. Have you read all your current contracts for possible CMMC requirements? Are any of your current contracts up for renewal or rebid? Right there, that's really critical because almost every new contract that comes out is going to have some kind of CMMC requirement. So if they currently have one and they're having a rebid, they're probably going to have to be level 1 or level 2, depending on what it says. And if it's up for renewal, they may have to be as well. Are you aware or have you been told you're at risk of losing any contracts? Are you currently under any compliance deadlines, right? There are some people, I had a call from an MSP yesterday, they said their customers trying to go through it. They're doing a bad job, according to them, but they're trying to go through it. So therefore, that's the question. Have you started working towards any compliance in any way? If you want to see a comedy show, go see one of your clients try to work through level 2 CMMC compliance on their own. It's worth having some popcorn and a Coke and watching. So how can you make money? Well, you could sell readiness services. Now look, we happen to provide it, but let's not make this an IGI webinar, okay? We're going to talk later about the things we can bring to the table, but the reality is you can sell readiness services from a third party that has CCAs on staff. And again, you want CCAs because they've gone through the certification process. They've had to test. They've gone through everything and they understand it in its entirety. And that way you can help ensure that it's credible and assessment aligned guidance. So what are the things that a readiness study does? Well, the first thing is it scopes it out. Second thing is it does a gap assessment, creation of a remediation plan, policies, and ongoing compliance support over that 3-year period. How do you make money? Well, guess what? Those policies have to be met, and anything in that gap assessment has to be met. So hardware, software, implementation services, documentation and evidence support services, continuous monitoring and change management in the environment. So A, it happens, but 2, it gets documented properly. So there's all kinds of ways to make money, and to be perfectly honest, that's where the most money is going to be made. Right now, if you look at CMMC opportunities, the most money is being made with what the MSP has to do to get them from point A to point B so they can go to market. Now, remember, you're dealing with all the technology stuff, but if you look at CMMC guidance, there's physical, administrative, and technological. The technological is one of the biggest pieces of it that you have to have in place. So again, huge opportunity for you to make money, but again, please, 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 I am not saying there's $1 billion worth of business. I'm saying if you have clients or you run into a prospect, there is a decent amount of money for you to make in order to make sure they meet all the policies and, fix that gap assessment and implement the remediation plan.
And I know you keep saying there's not a $1 billion out there, because right now we're just focused on the DoD, right? This is really honed in on just the DoD contractors. There's a good chance that this is going to come downstream and hit other government entities throughout the next several years. So getting in early, getting these controls in place, getting an understanding, it will open up from our understanding and what we are seeing across the board through other agencies throughout the government. So this is not going anywhere, and honestly, it's just, I think it's going to spread really, really quickly. So partnering with IGI, right? We had a call two days ago on Tuesday with an MSP. It's like, wow, IGI makes the CMMC manageable for us, don't you guys? You know, that was his. IGI makes CMMC manageable for MSPs, and that just stuck, right? Because that's just what we do. So our team has deep expertise. Going through the CCA, CMMC certified assessors. We will lead those engagements. Get your clients ready. Our CCAs, work with multiple different auditing firms that we can, partner with, that we've seen their processes and their procedures and how they're auditing, what their expectations are. So our team has a very long, extensive, training when it comes to this. We provide that ongoing guidance and support. Like I said earlier in the beginning, this is a life cycle certification. It's not just that one and done. You have to maintain, monitor, and then recertify. There are tools and automation that do come along with this. You've probably heard, just put them in GCC High. We'll put them in an enclave. Those are great opportunities, right? But it's not always a one size fits all. And this is really where partnering with IGI and our CCAs, can come to the table and help understand what your client's environment is. And we're not coming in and pushing firewalls and pushing updated hardware and software and all those things. This is where our co-selling opportunities come into play, because again, that's just revenue right back to the MSP.
Yeah, and to just make sure they understand, the reason we keep harping on the shadowing auditors and everything like that, because I know we've said it a few times, again, whether you use us or you use someone else, there are a lot of people out there that are not certified, that have not ever worked with an auditor, that have never shadowed an auditor, and they have no idea what to expect. They're literally going down a set of guidelines they get off the CMMC website. I'm not beating them up for trying to make money. What I am telling you is that the reality at the end of the day is there are hundreds of companies out there that are failing their audits because they're not getting good advice. So again, whether you work with us or you work with someone else, please make sure they're certified. Please make sure it's something they've done before. Please make sure they've at least worked with one auditor so they understand the process. So what are your next steps? Well, identify target clients. Do you have clients that need CMMC? Do you have prospects that you're working with that need CMMC? Run the discovery. Ask questions, understand where they're at, what they need, et cetera, et cetera. You can position readiness services, and Ken's gonna kind of go through how you can do that in a second, but we do offer something that'll make that very simple for you, and it's at no charge. And then engage partner support, right? Engage a partner to help you through it. We come in as a third party. You're involved every step of the way. Everything goes on your paper. You sell everything. We're not going to a client direct, and we're not selling direct. So this is all ways for you to make money.
Yeah. So perfect segue into what we can offer. Okay. So we offer multiple services that MSPs, could be interested in, and position them yourselves or your clients for these opportunities. So Matthew made mention about, a zero cost service. Our team, has been doing this for a few years now. And like Matthew said, we would see organizations say, oh yeah, I'm ready for the audit. I just need a quick review. And we get in there and they've got a negative score where, 6 hours earlier, they were ready for the full on audit. Okay. So our team of assessors said, hey, let's take a step back. Let's offer a CMMC readiness snapshot. Okay. Let's take time with the client, their MSP, decision makers, and get a true state of the union from them and understand if they are truly ready for that next step. And from that, we would be able to say, okay, yep, you know what, let's just go on with the gap assessment to make sure that you're aligned, or hey, you need a full assessment, right? You need that full white glove engagement. So we could do the readiness gap assessment, gives them that information. Here's your POAM. MSP can help you. You can do it, and we're here for assistance if needed. Okay. Majority of the clients that we're getting are falling in this white glove engagement because they need everything, right? They think they have policies and procedures in place, and when we start looking at them, there's huge holes. They're AI, right? Somebody throws them through ChatGTP and thinks they're good to go, and that's what they're trained on. They understand that it has no bearing on the organization. They just throw in a couple of templates and fill in somebody's name and title, and they're good to go. And unfortunately, that's not going to fly with CMMC. So they're really leaning heavily on our white glove engagement, where we are taking essentially over that CMMC readiness. We're helping with the policies and procedures. We're holding the interviews. We're going through all level 2, 320 controls, providing the evidence. Some cases even, getting them the cage code set up and spur scoring. So we can do it all, or as minimal as they need, as such as just that gap assessment, that reassurance before they go to that audit stage. Because like Matthew said, as they go through that audit and they fail, it does get documented and reported. Majority of C3POAs do offer like a mock assessment, right? We do recommend that even if you go through our service offerings, we still want them to go through that mock audit, right? So that mock audit, they can say, all right, here's all, what parts you failed on. You've got to be able to show that you've complied in those gaps, and then they would come back and do the audit, right? Versus going straight to the audit, paying 5 figures and failing, and then waiting another 6 to 9 months, because that's about the time frame that auditors are backlogged right now. But doing that, we're there. We make sure that they are ready and that it is a clean handoff for your client. And ideally, in a perfect scenario, where you'd be part of it as the MSP, and then we would be there as the audit guidance as a representative of that organization. So that way, we're there to answer any questions along with you and your client. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, my contact information is here at the bottom of the screen here. I know we'll send you guys a copy of it. But yeah, that's how we can help you guys make money.
So resources. Several of you have been asking, okay, what do I do? Well, first of all, we've created a 5-minute pitch script for you on how to talk about it. We've created a starting email and a couple LinkedIn outreach templates. And we've given you a bunch of discovery questions, which they were in the presentation, but they'll also be there. We'll also support you, right? Delivery support. And we'll help you with ongoing revenue support in reference to continuous compliance monitoring and reporting frameworks and co-selling and all that other kind of good stuff. But at the end of the day, you just have to ask, right? I just had this question. The reality is you have to ask. And somebody asked, there were a bunch of questions that were submitted ahead of time. Before I forget, this will be sent out within 48 hours. You'll get the resource kit, you'll get a recording. Also, you get a link to a recording of another CMMC webinar we did, which goes deeper dive into the technical requirements and things like that. But one of the questions was how to approach the conversation with clients. They're even more clueless than we are about this. That's the discovery questions, right? Ask them those questions. If they have no idea, guess what? That's an engagement for you. That's an engagement for you to go look for that information and search for that information and try to figure out if they have that stuff. The other thing is, again, FCI and CUI, pretty straightforward. Do they have any contracts? Literally, do they have a contract stored anywhere? Level 1. Do they have CUI? So i.e., are they working with a DoD contract? Did they win one? In a lot of cases, that's going to be level 2. So you need to go in there and be the expert, ask them if they don't know, then you need to start asking other questions and kind of try to dig down on it, if you will. How do I tell if the client needs level 1 or level 2? I think we covered that in the fact that the document will actually say it if they've got a bid. However, if they're already working with a contractor or DoD entity, they have to be, if they're dealing with CUI, they have to be level 2. Period, end of story. Let's see. Strategies for overcoming stubborn, self-attested CMMC level 2 contractors that are a hard fail but unwilling to set feedback. Explain it to them. Sit down with them and explain, point blank. Here's what you're missing. Bring them to us and we'll do that readiness audit, or we can do that readiness snapshot and show them where they would fail an audit. If they're truly not willing to do any of that, run quickly, because that means they don't care about their business and they don't care about the fact that they could be audited and go bye-bye. So, that's the only thing I can tell you on that. Scope of work of a MSP versus RPO versus C3PAO. I think we covered most of that, but again, MSP is implementing the remediation plan, documenting and providing evidence. RPOs are the, for lack of better term, readiness practitioners. They're not certified, but they're out there trying to help people get ready for audits. And C3PAOs are the ones that are actually doing the audits and certifying that you meet all the requirements. What can we do to ensure that our team is properly training and equipped to be the trusted advisor for our clients' CMMC needs? Well, there are a few ways. Selfishly, you can work with us. We're doing this for an MSP right now. We're helping their team understand, get up to speed, learn, et cetera, et cetera. We're happy to help you with that. 2, read like crazy. Understand everything. Rewatch this webinar, watch the webinar we just did that goes through everything. Learn as much as you can. There's all kinds of stuff out there. But the easy thing is, and it's easy for me because it's nice when you work with us, is to engage us and we'll help you do it. Can non-US citizens be authorized to run audits on customers? Yes, they can. They have to pass the DoD mandatory background check process, but there's nothing that is limiting a non-US citizen from being able to do that. What requirements are in place for an MSP to support a CMMC required business? I think we covered that, but again, your ability to meet those controls, document them, and provide evidence that you're meeting whatever controls need to be met from a technological standpoint. And what is the best resource to see the requirements for each CMMC level? I've got it here. If you want to write it down, it's https and .dodcio.defense.gov/CMMC. And that will get you more information than you've ever wanted to see on CMMC. It's good reading material if you're having trouble getting to sleep at night.
Real quick, Matthew, I also threw that in the chat so that way they didn't have to write all that down.
Perfect. If we are in scope and we are also entering info into SPRS for our company as the MSP, or do we just provide documentation to our clients? So if you're in scope, then again, you do not have to be certified, but you do need to show that you are meeting all the requirements. You have to document them and you need to provide evidence. Let's see if there are any other questions. I do not see any other questions. If you have any, we'll hang out for a little bit and we're happy to answer all of them. We will send this out again with the kit, with the sales kit and everything like that within 48 hours. We really appreciate you coming. Ken and I thank you for being here. Hopefully this was helpful. And hopefully, again, we've showed you that we're not another fly-by-night. This is something we live, breathe, and we are actually able to help you with these things, because again, there are a lot of people out there saying it and not able to do it. Appreciate y'all. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and thanks for attending.